Governments around the world, even those that pretend they support free speech, are looking for ways to silence people. In the United States, governments find ways to work around the First Amendment, funding and co-opting research groups and third parties to do their bidding. In the United Kingdom, the government is looking to introduce the so-called Online Safety Bill, which is designed to coddle the population and crush speech, all under the guise of protecting people. In the EU, which has never particularly respected the idea of free speech, lawmakers are finding ways to regulate platforms through the upcoming Digital Services Act and strong-arm them into silencing citizens on the grounds of harm or disinformation. Another country looking to do this is Australia. And while other countries at least try to talk out both sides of their mouth and at least pretend to support the idea of free speech, paying lip service to a constitution or some higher ideals of human freedoms, Australia doesn't even bother. Instead, with a domineering streak left over from its days as a former penal colony, Australia makes blatant calls on social media platforms to silence people and calls for an end to online privacy. The audacious and tactless way Australia attempts to attack civil liberties, particularly regarding speech, would be described as tyrannical or authoritarian if the same words came out the mouth of a non-Western leader. One of the most brazen government officials up to these tricks is Julie Inman-Grant, the Australian E-Safety Commissioner. And never let anyone tell you that the revolving door between private and public forms of control doesn't exist. It turns out Inman-Grant has been working on this from all angles. As the former Director of Public Policy for Australia and Southeast Asia for Twitter, there she focused on, quote, public policy and corporate social responsibility until 2016, and now she's managed to worm her way into the Australian government where she's focusing on e-safety. That's safety, as in working to eradicate privacy and shut people up. All for your own good, of course. In June, in an audacious display of coercion masquerading as concern for safety, there's that word again, the Australian authorities have embarked on a full-scale assault against free speech. The latest target of this Orwellian crusade is none other than Twitter, now under the stewardship of Elon Musk. Since Musk's acquisition of Twitter last October, Australia's E-Safety Commission says it has seen its complaints related to the platform skyrocket. They would have you believe that almost a third of online hate reports now concern Twitter, compared to less than 10% before Musk took over. What's happening here is nothing less than a concentrated attempt to silence the proposed resurgence of free expression under Musk's leadership. Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant, who has been on Musk's case since he took over and is spearheading this campaign, bemoans the reactivation of banned accounts and possible algorithm changes that amplify certain content. She laments over the platform transforming into a, quote, cesspool of pestilence. But let's cut through the hyperbole. What is really at play here is a government bureaucrat disturbed by the newfound freedom of expression and the potential loss of control over the narrative. Listen to how Inman-Grant frames it.
A third of all reports into our Office of Online Hate are coming from Twitter. It's been a huge surge since October 22 when Elon Musk took over. And of course, there have been a confluence of factors that have added to this. You know, Twitter's always been fiery in terms of discourse, but it's turned into an absolute bin fire. It's very, very hard to be permanently banned from Twitter.
Did you catch that? It's very, very hard to be permanently banned from Twitter. A government official lamenting that it's not easy to permanently silence people.
You have to be the most egregious, repetitive spewers of hate to contravene the Twitter rules multiple times and be banned.
But that's not all. The unelected official then goes on to say that she wants ways to find out who these people are, particularly Twitter Blue subscribers. Elon Musk has presented himself as a stalwart champion of free speech. His decision to grant amnesty to 62,000 accounts previously shackled by Twitter's inconsistent ban hammer, he believes is emblematic of his commitment to liberty. These voices, which Inman-Grant disdainfully refers to as tweeters on death row, have been granted a second wind. The social media landscape has been reinvigorated with diverse viewpoints, including those that governments like Australia find inconvenient and want to stamp out. What's particularly disturbing is Australia's unabashed threat to use its draconian Online Safety Act to impose fines on Twitter that could reach a staggering $687,000 a day. The true intent behind this act is laid bare: to suffocate and control the online space. Australia's brazen attempt to impose its own form of thought policing on a global platform is deeply unsettling, but all the more common in the modern world. It's essential to call out the sanctimonious rhetoric. While Inman Grant expresses concern for marginalized communities, this is nothing but a smokescreen. True free speech is the ultimate equalizer. It's the marginalized and the oppressed who benefit the most when their voices can be heard without fear of government reprisal. Musk's Twitter responded with poetic justice to the press queries regarding this issue from Australia. An automated reply with a poop emoji. This succinctly captures the attitude of free thinkers towards the heavy hand of government overreach. Commissioner Inman Grant's targeting of Twitter didn't stop there. Of course, she found a way to go further, calling for Twitter employees to start being fined if they don't respond to her demand letter. If Twitter ignored the fines for not censoring speech, Inman Grant said the commission would pursue further through the court system and, if possible, international partners. Anyone from Twitter who flies to Australia will be fined at the border, she said. But it doesn't stop with Twitter. Commissioner Inman Grant is also planning to target private documents and photos stored in cloud services, with the suggestion that there could be some kind of proposals towards a back door. In a June 7th article for The Australian, Inman Grant wrote about how she wants other forms of online tools, such as cloud services, games, and dating apps to be registered under the controversial Online Safety Act. Listen very carefully to what she wrote.
In my capacity as Australia's e-safety commissioner and under Australia's Online Safety Act, I have now determined that 5 codes, including the social media services, internet carriage services, app distribution services, hosting services, and equipment codes contain appropriate community safeguards as required under the Act to be registered. But 2 key codes fail to meet this high bar, and I will be rejecting them. These codes include the Designated Internet Services Code, covering apps, websites, and file and photo storage services like Apple iCloud, Google Drive, and Microsoft OneDrive, and the relevant Electronic Services Code, covering dating sites, online games, direct and instant messaging services, including encrypted services. These 2 codes have been rejected for failing to include adequate protections, including a broadly applicable commitment to proactively detect and remove known child abuse material and pro-terror content. We know file and photo storage services like iCloud, Google Drive, and OneDrive are used by pedophiles to store and share child sexual abuse material. And we also know that email services and partially encrypted messaging services are widely used by these predators to share this illegal content. eSafety will now draft mandatory and enforceable standards for those sections of the online industry.
Inman Grant is suggesting that just because perverts can use video games and cloud storage to transmit abuse material, that online privacy must be eradicated for everyone, and that even encrypted communication providers could have to comply with censorship laws and content scanning. Once again, the idea of protecting children is being used as a way to undermine everyone's privacy and give the government easy access to your personal and private data. It's not the first time Inman Grant has been wanting to end privacy. In May, the commissioner was bending over backwards to try and justify it, and her reasoning made absolutely no sense. An inversion of reality is one way to put it. The e-safety commissioner has made bizarre comments related to end-to-end encryption, comparing those companies who won't effectively remove this security feature that protects communications from spying to, somebody quote, leaving a home open to an intruder. Strong encryption is there precisely to keep all actors, bad and otherwise, out of where they don't belong, that is, people's private communications, their online home. But the commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, seems to think, in a quote to Politico, that unless the door is actually left open by virtue of tainting encryption with software backdoors, bad actors will get in. That's right. The logic here seems to be that it is open, not closed doors, that keep uninvited guests out. Listen to exactly what she bizarrely said to Politico.
This is not only companies really taking a blind eye to live crime scenes happening on their platforms, but they're also failing to properly harden their systems and storage against abuse. It's akin to leaving a home open to an intruder. Once that bad actor is inside the house, good luck getting them out.
But what if that bad actor is an authoritarian government? Speaking in the context of the likes of Apple and even Microsoft having encryption features in their products, Grant equated this to, quote, taking a blind eye to live crime scenes happening on their platforms, but also, quote, failing to properly harden their systems and storage against abuse. But technologically illiterate commissioners aren't the only threats to freedom in Australia. The Australian government, with its insatiable hunger for control, has concocted a disastrous potion, deceptively titled the Communications Legislation Amendment, Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill. It's another cunning ploy to quash dissent and curb the free flow of information. The Minister for Communications, Michelle Rowland, is spearheading this Orwellian crusade under the guise of protecting Australians from misinformation, which, quote, sows division within the community, undermines trust, and can threaten public health and safety. Lofty words. But is the minister suggesting that Australians are not capable of discerning fact from fiction and need Big Brother to play the guardian angel? The ACMA, the self-anointed guardians of truth, is granted unprecedented powers. This includes demanding documents from digital platforms concerning misinformation, which is such a broad term that it can include anything not to the government's liking. It's alarming that ACMA has been tasked to arbitrate what's fact or fiction. What's next? Thought police patrolling the Australian internet? The real issue here is the gargantuan scope of power, concentrated in the hands of a government body with little to no oversight. The subjective nature of terms like misinformation and disinformation are ripe for abuse. This sets a chilling precedent where digital platforms might self-censor to avoid the wrath of ACMA, resulting in Australians being kept in the dark. And what's with these astronomical fines for a violation? Essentially, it's putting a financial gun to the head of digital platforms. Submit to the government's narrative or face oblivion. Digital platforms might simply purge anything remotely controversial or critical to steer clear of these outrageous penalties. This does nothing but quell free expression and exchange of ideas, the very essence of a democratic society. The government's thirst for control is alarmingly camouflaged under the banner of protecting citizens. But what it's doing is infantilizing them, deeming them incapable of critical thinking. This is not protection. It's tyranny wrapped in a benevolent garb. Public consultation is open till August 6th, but one wonders if the government is genuinely interested in what the people have to say. If it is, it wouldn't be trying to censor them in the first place. Australians and the global community at large should be standing up against this blatant attack on free speech. Today it's Australia that's being openly brazen. But this sets a dangerous precedent that could ripple across shores.